Butch Cassidy and The Sundance Kid, one of the biggest films in 1969, starring two of the biggest stars of the 60s in Paul Newman and Robert Redford. It's one of the wittiest westerns of all time and one of my personal favourites, a childhood favourite of mine. And today, with a special guest, a real guest host for once, we're going to talk to you about why you should definitely watch this movie. Hello everybody and welcome back to the Golden Hour Film Podcast. Yes, you read the title correctly. This is not a 1940s film, nor an Alfred Hitchcock film. Great observation, guys. I'm so proud of you. And for once, I'm actually joined by a real guest host. I know I always say that Shane is my co-host and not guest host. I actually have a guest host. It is Nathan from Maple Street Movies. How are you, Nathan?
Doing good. I'm really happy to be here. Happy that you reached out too. I'm happy to talk classic Hollywood anytime, and it's especially fun when I kind of go outside of the black and white realm and look at other classics from the era. And so just really excited to be here and excited to talk more about Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, because already hearing your experience, I already think I have a different experience from you. So this should be good.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I kind of picked this one for a few reasons. I kind of wanted this to be as far removed from what we're normally doing as possible, because the fact that we actually have a guest on the podcast, I thought, I'm not going to do 40s Hitchcock because that's kind of me and Shane's thing anyway. So I didn't want it to be black and white. I didn't want it to be 40s. I didn't want it to be Hitchcock. Therefore, we've landed at Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. One of those films for me anyway. I remember watching it as a kid. No spoilers just yet. But the ending mesmerized me as a child. And it's still great. It's still amazing.
Yeah, no, that doesn't surprise me at all. I can't imagine seeing it as a child. I was gonna say one way that we differ is you saw it as a child. I didn't see this movie for the first time until 2 years ago. But
right, okay.
It was one of those movies that I heard about my entire life. And so you know about Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, but you don't know why it's so great and you don't know why it's talked about so much. And so actually seeing it, you're like, that's why. Of course, it's a great movie.
Yeah, I kind of got a bizarre film education from my dad when I was about 12, where I watched, I don't advise this for children, it worked out for me, but I can't say it'll work out for your own children, but I watched the Blues Brothers, all three Godfather films, Braveheart, and Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid within a month.
Wow.
And that month basically just turned me into a film fan.
That's like... So, not only a film fan, but a man. Like, geez, that's what an experience.
Yeah. Particularly, vividly, I remember the ending of this film and then the horse in Godfather just like put hairs on my chest as a little 12-year-old.
That horse in the Godfather, that scene still messes with me. So I can't imagine.
So yeah, with Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, it obviously came out in 1969. So adjust this for inflation. It had a budget of $6 million, and obviously when you look at budgets and stuff, it doesn't normally factor in marketing, so it needed about 13 to 14 million to break even. It made 45 million in the first year, and then went on just in America alone to gross over $100 million. So to call this a success is a bit of an understatement. It won 4 Academy Awards. It was also nominated for Best Picture and Best Director, but it won the Academy Awards for Best Original Score, Best Original Song, because of course it did, Best Cinematography, and Best Screenplay, written by William Goldman, who did a great job. He also wrote Princess Bride and All the President's Men, so the guy can write a film.
Yeah, no kidding. I didn't even know that. Checks out. I need to see more of his movies now.
Yeah, no, he's a particularly accomplished writer. Also, because we tend to do this particularly with the Hitchcock films, I don't have the Hitchcock Truffaut book to lean on like a crutch in this episode. But I can tell you that Steve McQueen and Jack Lemmon both turned down the role of Sundance Kid for 2 different reasons. Jack Lemmon didn't like riding horses, and Steve McQueen didn't like Paul Newman. So, go figure.
All right, cool.
The Writers Guild of America also have it as the 11th best screenplay of all time, which, you'll probably hear us talking about the writing quite a bit, because the one-liners, the screenplay, the story, the narrative, it's so good. It's a great film.
Yeah, totally agree.
Not that I can say that I've seen them. It has a made-for-TV sequel with Catherine Ross and it's got a prequel which came out in '79 with the guy who played the sheriff, Jeff Corey. So I probably won't watch them, but they exist. So if you want to watch them, feel free.
Yeah, leave a comment below on what you thought of it, because we're not gonna watch it.
Yeah, no, I've no intention of watching the prequel or the sequel, but here we are.
Yeah.
Also, of course, if any of you are new here, please feel free to subscribe. We do upload an episode of the podcast every Friday at 6 p.m. GMT. I realize we may get an influx of Americans, so you're going to have to adjust that to your own time zone. Sorry about that. But it's 6 p.m. GMT. It's like 12. It's 12 for you anyway. Like
Sounds
in the
good.
afternoon.
Yeah.
And yeah, I reckon we just get into it. So it's actually a biography. Some people, or a biop, sorry, I should say. People do debate the accuracy of it, so I'll kind of let you know the things that are particularly contentious or particularly not contentious as we go through it, as to what parts of this film are definitely real. It does open with the title card that says most of what follows is true. So, take that even with a pinch of salt.
Mm-hmm.
So we start off with the Hole in the Wall gang led by Butch Cassidy. It's kind of playing as the credits are rolling on this sort of old-timey cinema. And then, of course, that title card, most of what follows is true. And yeah, we immediately are thrown into kind of what old Hollywood transitioning into new Hollywood. These sort of connotations and undertones straight away, because Paul Newman's Butch Cassidy goes into a bank which is super heavily armed and being locked up and being shut up, and he just says, what happened to the old bank? It was beautiful. And the guy just says people kept robbing it. So
simple enough.
Yeah, instantly we're finding out that Butch Cassidy, he's maybe coming out of his prime a little bit. He's kind of like when Ronaldo moved to the Saudi Premier League. He's not in his prime anymore, but he's still trying to score them goals. Then we meet Sundance Kid, and he's accused of cheating in a game of cards, but he refuses to leave. And when the guy threatens him with a gun, Butch Cassidy demands that he is asked to stick around, and then whenever he realizes this is the other guy, that this is the Sundance Kid he's dealing with, he asks, kind of stupidly, "Hey kid, how good are you?" And Butch Cassidy, or not Butch Cassidy, he is there though. Sundance Kid just starts shooting at him, but around him.
That is such a cool setup scene too.
Yeah. It's such a great way to introduce the Sundance Kid character.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what a name as well, the Sundance Kid.
I know.
So the lads decide as they are going through the Hole in the Wall, which is basically just this big canyon, which is where they got the name of the gang from, that they might want to move to Bolivia. Why? Well, Butch reckons it's the new California, because we are in the late 1800s in America, so prospectors who went to California and made a fair wad of cash, well, they now have all that cash. So where's the next California? Butch Cassidy reckons it's Bolivia. I don't think he's going to be right, but we'll come to that later. So then when they get through the Hole in the Wall, they meet the rest of the Hole in the Wall gang, who is now led by Harvey, who's just a bit of a dim-witted gang member, because Harvey says he runs the gang now because Butch Cassidy just keeps disappearing on them pretty much, which leads to the amazing knife fight scene.
It was something that I didn't remember on my rewatch. So I saw this movie 2 years ago, and then I rewatched it in preparation for this episode. And it goes in a route that I was not expecting. I think it's very funny how you're ready for something big and epic, and it goes the comedic route. And it's kind of, it reminds me of the Indiana Jones scene where the sword fighter has that crazy choreography and Indiana Jones just shoots the guy. It kind of goes in that route where it's like, oh, that's it. Okay, cool. That happened. Sounds good. Let's move on.
Yeah, basically this absolute unit of a man, Harvey Logan, says he's ready for a knife fight. Winner gets the gang. And Butch Cassidy says, well, we got to go through the rules first. And he says, what, the rules in a knife fight? And then Butch Cassidy kicks him where no man wants to be kicked. And that's the end of the fight.
Mm-hmm.
And the funniest part of all of this, because it is quite a witty movie, it's a pretty funny movie. The funniest part of all of this for me is that then they end up doing Harvey's plan anyway. Like, it was actually Harvey's plan is what to do next, and they just do it anyway.
And it's like, it's not even like a day later. It's minutes after. He's like, say, what was Harvey thinking? Like, Harvey was onto something there. Let's do that. It's like, what? Like, that just sets you up for what to expect for the next 2 hours. That's how spontaneous Butch Cassidy is and his whole gang. It's hilarious.
Yeah, like Sundance Kid says, oh yeah, he's a great thinker as Butch Cassidy. He's just pretty good at calling things on the fly. I wouldn't go as far as to call him a great thinker. He's just very good at calling things on the fly.
Yeah. My first review for this movie, I said something like, I don't know if Butch Cassidy is a genius or a complete moron. And I think that's how it's supposed to be. You're just kind of following them and seeing what they get themselves into.
Well, ironically, he does get called a moron later on in the film.
This is true.
So then we meet one of the best comedic characters in the film, Woodcock. And as far as reports go, all of this actually happened, the Woodcock stuff. Yeah, so basically, Woodcock is on a train that Butch Cassidy, the Sundance Kid, and the rest of the Hole in the Wall gang are trying to rob. Woodcock won't open the door because he says he works for E.H. Harriman of the Union Pacific Railroad, and he is a loyal staff member, and he is not going to open this door. So the lads blow the door open with dynamite and take all the money, and they leave. But of course, just to kind of show that Butch Cassidy is a bit of an honorable thief. He is, the whole time that they're doing this, he is checking to see if Woodcock is like okay and like still alive and stuff.
Yeah.
I think he may have even gone as far as to tell him to like back away from the door whilst they're blowing it up so he doesn't get hurt. Like, he is,
Yes.
He's not trying to kill anyone.
Nope.
He's just trying to get as much money as he can whilst, robbing everyone.
He's like the most considerate thief ever.
So then we see the sheriff, again played by Jeff Corey, and he basically wants everybody to round up a posse, and they're going to go and get Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. And it's another sort of note to how the West isn't so wild anymore, because not only do none of these people in the posse have guns, but none of them actually want guns. They actually want nothing to do with this. They don't want to go and pillage some guy who they've never met or has never dealt with them before. There's no torches and all of that jazz. They're just kind of like, no, well, you get him. It's your job. Yeah. And then in the meantime, some guy's trying to sell a bike as well. Good for him.
I know. I love the bike side story.
Yeah, it's some serious guerrilla marketing. It's a great time to get in there and try and sell your bike. Oh, and I should say, whilst all of these people in the crowd are like, oh, well, one guy's like, oh, well, I'm not arsed because they're probably on the other side of the country by now. Sundance Kid and Butch Cassidy are actually just watching this from the other side of the street, and they're just laughing. They're having a great time just watching this sheriff lose his mind as to how to formulate a plan to catch these guys.
It's so good.
So Sundance Kid then goes off solo, and he breaks into a woman's house. It's pretty alarming at first. I can't lie. I was like, I don't remember him being this dodgy. Mm-hmm. He breaks into Eda Place's place. She is played by Catherine Ross. And yeah, it turns out they know each other and they're very much together. So it's not that creepy. Yeah. He does break into her place though. Eda and Butch Cassidy, the following morning, go for a little cycle. And there's all sorts of things that this kind of alludes to, but one thing that you got to mention with this is Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head.
Yep.
The song that was made for this film, it won the Academy Award for Best Original Song, and quite famously, Robert Redford at the time thought it was a terrible song choice and couldn't understand it because there was no rain in the scene. And then years later was like, I was stupid, I was wrong, the song is perfect for this film.
That's awesome. I didn't know that. I love the cycling scene. For one, I have a different experience with that song because for me, that's the song from Spider-Man 2, which obviously I know it's from Butch Cassidy, but I grew up on Spider-Man 2, and so the first time watching it, I actually don't think I knew that that's where the song came from. And so my first watch, I'm like, oh, this is where the Raindrops song comes from that I'm so used to seeing Tobey Maguire like cheerfully walk through the streets of New York to. And so that was cool. But then it's a really sweet scene. I think what cracks me up the most about this scene though is the towards the end of the scene where Butch Cassidy crashes into the gate and lands right next to the cow. There's this quick moment where him and the cow make eye contact, and he does like a mocking face towards the cow, and it just like sets the cow off, and it just goes into a full on chase to Butch Cassidy, and it's so funny. Like it was a scene that I had forgotten about from the first time, and I probably laughed at it the first time, but the second time I really like I had to rewind it because it's just so. It's one of those scenes that it does nothing for the story. Like it's not adding
No.
anything, but it's there and it fits perfectly. And it's part of the reason why the script is so funny because they include those little moments that add up for just a very entertaining 2 hours, give or take. So that's like I don't know if that's the right uh, um, thing I'm supposed to take from this scene, but it's the highlight for me. I think it's very funny.
Yeah, no, that is definitely the best part of the scene. I think maybe the reason the scene is there, although they could have done it in a far less comedic way if they wanted to,
Hmm.
is basically just sets the undertones that maybe at a place, I don't know, is into Butch Cassidy or vice versa. But they go the comedic route, which is
Yeah.
the route that they tend to go in this film,
Hmm.
and it just kind of builds a great comedic atmosphere to the film, I feel.
Yeah. Agreed.
And guess who we're meeting again? It's Woodcock, who works for E.H. Harriman of the Union Pacific Railroad. And again, he will just not open that door. And
Doesn't he?
this, I.
Oh, sorry. I was
Go
gonna
ahead.
say, doesn't he have like a cast in this scene and like bruises from the
Yeah,
first
yeah.
time? I think that's such a funny added touch.
I believe, and quote me if I'm wrong, but this particular robbery in real life was called across like all the American newspapers and stuff the Great Train Robbery. So I wonder if this specific train robbery actually inspired the short film
Yeah.
from 1902, 1903.
Sounds good to
It's
me.
one of those 2 years. It's one
Yeah.
of those 2 years. I can't tell you which of the two it is, but it's one of the two. I actually I don't know for sure, but I do question. Maybe someone can let us know in the comments. Did this train robbery actually inspire
Yeah.
the film that came out so long ago? Because this is the one where the lads again plan A. They use the dynamite to blow up the door, but then
Hmm.
they discover the Woodcock has actually got a safe this time, and so they use dynamite to try and blow up the safe. They use too much dynamite and they blow the safe to high heavens, meaning that the money starts raining down. And again, allegedly, all of this actually did happen,
Wow.
which is wild to
It
think.
makes it even funnier.
And then this second train comes, and we are into the start of one of the slowest, but like it works, but one of the slowest chase
Yeah.
sequences in film history. It's the most methodical, looking over your shoulder and they're like, oh my god, they're still
still
there.
there,
How is
yeah.
this possible? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the whole joke. Who are these guys? They're still there.
Yes. Yes. I love it too because from the audience, I just like watching Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kids conversation of who it could be. They're running through all these
Yeah.
different past experiences they've had, and they're like, no, it couldn't be them because they'll never leave the country or they'll never leave the state, whatever, or they couldn't track us. We're on rock or whatever the case might be. They even get rid of a horse, get rid of their horse completely, and there's still that trail following them. They try to play tricks on them. But I thought it was funny how many times you hear them just say, "Who are those guys?" Because
Yeah.
I feel like that's the more realistic route. Like in a normal
Yeah.
movie, you would get like, "Who are those guys?" one time, and it moves on.
Yeah, yeah.
But this is like a genuine chase where they like. In real life, you repeat the same question when it's on your mind. You don't just stop because
Yeah.
you're thinking out loud, and it's a nice little touch that I think is realistic, but also adds to the humor of it, where they're like straight up baffled, like who are these people and why are they so good at tracking us, even though we're so good at getting away? So it makes for, like you said, very slow chase scene, but an incredible chase scene. Like I couldn't fault it at all. It's amazing.
And as well, with them constantly asking, like, who are those guys? The fact that they're both asking it,
Yeah.
it's these little things that kind of make this friendship between the two seem so real. Like, if I'd seen The Sting quite recently as well, same director, same actors, and
I love that one.
the lads have chemistry. The lads have chemistry.
Yes.
There's no doubt in that. But just watching this, oh, it's almost like one performance.
Yeah.
Like the two of them are almost, they are Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. It's like one performance between two actors. It's amazing.
They're so well synced. I completely agree.
And oh yeah, in the chase scene as well, it's another good one. Well, it's not really a one-liner because they go back and forth, but it was Butch Cassidy goes, "Oh, I think we lost him. Do you think we lost him?" And Sundance Kid goes, "No." And Butch Cassidy goes, "Yeah, no, me neither."
Yes, yes, great line.
So they think they've escaped whenever they get to this sort of small village, and they're in a room with some wonderful girl called Agnes, who just seems to really appreciate how kind Butch Cassidy is. Because let's hammer that home. He, again, in real life, allegedly, never really tried to harm anyone when he was robbing banks or anything. He really did try and be the pacifistic bank robber. And whenever the owner of this like saloon that they're hiding in is kind of forced to rat them out, he does try and help them, but then the guys tracking them realize that he's lying, so he kind of has to rat them out, or else he's the one in trouble.
Yep.
And you clearly don't want to mess with these guys, because in total this chase sequence is like 27 minutes of the movie. They are some dedicated guys.
I was gonna say one thing that I forgot to bring up, and this also goes back to the cow scene and how funny it is. But something the movie does that I think works so well is how it implements zooming in on characters or events that are happening. Like you zoom in on the cow, and it's so funny. But then in that scene, when the old guy turns him in, it goes from him like waving his arms like I'm innocent. It's them pointing to the window, and you just zoom in, and you don't hear him, but you can see what he's saying, and the zoom in adds this like tension to the scene and this thrill to the scene. And not a lot of movies, I mean, I'm no professional on zoom ins, but I feel like when a zoom in works well, it is like a defining characteristic of the movie because it's helping the movie move along. And so I just had to call that out because I love that shot of zooming in on the old guy who's revealing, no, they're right there. I think it's amazing.
And the lads then escape the saloon, and we get yet another. God, this movie's got so many good things.
Yes.
We get yet another example of how the Wild West isn't so wild anymore, because Butch Cassidy clearly goes for a tactic he's obviously used many times before, a distraction tactic. He lets all of the guys pursuing them's horses free, and then he like smacks them to get them to move, and they just don't move. And he's like, "Oh, what do I do here?" And Sundance Kid has to come over and like basically rescue him. And he's like, "Wow, those horses are really trained." It's like, yeah, the Wild West is moving on.
Yeah.
We've bikes now. Horses are being trained. Your banks are getting extra security.
Yeah.
It's the day of the cowboy is coming to an end, unfortunately, for these guys. That is. So when they escape this small town, they realize that these guys also have like lanterns and torches. They don't really figure out what it is. Again, a nice kind of realistic addition to the scene. Like they can't make out, is it a lantern, is it a torch? It's not like those guys have lanterns and you can see it from like a mile away. They're like, is it lanterns, is it torches? I don't know, they're still chasing us, let's go. So they try one of those tactics where they split up, and again, the tactic just doesn't work.
It's funny too how the tactic starts to work and then they reform and they're like, dang it, like it's working. Oh, dang it, it's not working. It's just funny watching their frustration. And I like too being with Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid instead of cutting back and forth between them and who's chasing them, because I think it makes it more mysterious and exciting and intense for us as the audience members too. So just another detail that I'm glad they didn't go that route of cutting back and forth, rather just sticking with Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid the whole time.
Yeah, because up until this point, we still haven't actually got any details on who's chasing them. They're basically just a blur in the background. They're very ominous is the word. They're very ominous. And it is then the next morning when there's a bit of daylight when they clock that one of the guys has like a bit of a white hat.
Yeah.
And then they start to kind of piece it together. But before then, we do get the great scene where they break into the sheriff's office because Butch Cassidy's next great plan to get them out of this situation is to just enlist in the army. And the sheriff is like, yeah, I hate to break it to you lads, but you are outlaws. And like we all know it. So like we're not just going to all collectively forget that you're outlaws so that you can escape these people who are chasing you. Like I secretly kind of like you guys, but like the rest of the police don't, so you're not going to get away with it. Someone in the army will probably recognize you anyway, so it's a stupid plan, guys. You may as well just go on ahead. And he does say the great line, there's two great lines in this scene. Whenever they first break in and they just kind of start chatting to the sheriff, he's like, you could have at least had the decency to like draw your guns on me. That's pretty funny. And then at the end of the scene, when the sheriff says, you guys are gonna die, and all you can choose is where. It's like, wow, that's
a powerful.
That's pretty prophetic.
Yeah.
And well, no spoilers here, but I sure hope it's not Bolivia because that's not what they think it's gonna be like. I can tell you that much.
No, definitely not.
And the next day, they're still being chased. So they reckon first of all that it could be a guy called Lord Baldmere, who's tracking them. He's like this legendary Native American tracker who can like track people on hard ground, on soft ground, on sand, wherever. This Lord fella, he can track you, is the moral of the story. And then when they see the guy with the white hat in the front, they realize that could be Joe LaForce, who they deduce that by Butch Cassidy saying to Sundance Kid, who is the toughest lawman in the country? And he goes, Joe LaForce. And he's like, what does he wear? A white hat. Look at the guy in the front. And they're like, ooh.
Yeah. Yeah, very shocking. Shocking for them, but also not shocking. And I think it's kind of like, I don't know if humbling's the right word, but they're like, why is he on this case? Like, why is he going after us of all things? They're like almost oblivious to their crimes and to their reputation.
Yeah, it's almost as if this like Avengers level team has been assembled to catch these two has-been outlaws.
Yeah,
so
seriously.
The reasoning as to why they're being pursued is also still unknown. These guys are just chasing them very slowly, but very surely. And they then, the next morning, they do get to Etta Place's place where they realize that in the papers it has been reported that E.H. Harriman is the man behind this super posse of like the best lawmen and trackers in the country. The man's got a lot of cash and the man's got a lot of anger because he owned both trains that these guys robbed in this film. And it's personal because when Butch Cassidy says the amount of money that he's spending on this team, if he just paid us that, we'd stop robbing him. She says, no, they're getting paid to kill you. So this isn't a debt that money can solve.
Yeah.
This E.H. Harriman wants these guys dead.
Yeah. I think it's interesting, too, that they point out the fact that the money he's paying to have them go after Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid is more than what they were ever stealing from the trains too.
Yeah.
Just to re-emphasize the point of how determined he is to get them. So just, I guess, echoing your sentiments, your comments, I agree. And I'm glad they included that too, because it also sets the tone for how serious this is. That this guy's not going to give up. He's going to go until he gets his way, pretty much.
Yeah, so they kind of realize as well that if these guys are out to kill them, they are not safe at a place. So they head to Bolivia.
Yeah.
And they do so through the means of picture slideshow.
So amazing.
I think this is because the gang, the Hole in the Wall gang, actually between fleeing Wyoming and going to Bolivia, they did get this like real famous picture, which was then used as their mugshot for the rest of their lives. Where the in real life, there's like five lads. The five lads all got a picture of them in New York in these like really flashy suits
Wow.
before they all went their separate ways, and that picture was then used as their mugshot. So I think that's maybe why the director went the route of doing like a picture slideshow of them between fleeing Wyoming and going to Bolivia. But that's just my theory. I could be totally wrong there.
I think that's a safe theory. It would make sense too. And it's also like good on the director or the writer, whoever made that decision. Like, what a keen observation in history to be like, hey, this happened, this brief moment. Let's make a whole entire section to transition our story into this next location. I think that's genius because they could have easily gone that route of them actually traveling, which wouldn't have been bad necessarily, but what we got, I mean, it's so memorable and one of the defining, again, one of the defining, I think, characteristics of the movie as a whole, just how creative they are with their storytelling at times.
Yeah, big time. And then after the slideshow, we get the reveal of Bolivia. And what's Bolivia like, Nathan?
Yeah. Well, it's not a place that I'd want to move to anytime soon. We'll just say that. I think that I think Sundance Kid's response is the funniest because Butch Cassidy's very optimistic about it, and you can tell that even he's still trying to be optimistic. He's trying to.
Yeah, he literally says, "Oh well, it could be worse."
Yeah, exactly. He's like scratching the bottom of the barrel, like, hey, yeah, how bad could it be, kind of thing. And I think I can't remember the exact quote. I'm gonna butcher it if I try. But Sundance Kid says something along the lines of like, "What if this is the best part of Bolivia too? Like, we don't even know what the rest of it looks like." And I thought that was even funnier. And so, yeah, not the best location, but makes for a very funny scene though.
Yeah, I think I do like it. Obviously, it is a thing that happened in real life that the two of them fled to Bolivia, but I do like the idea that these guys have basically the Wild West is now just the West, and the lawmen have caught up to them, so they have to go to somewhere where it's still a bit wild in order for them to still feel like they're in their prime. Again, a bit like Ronaldo in the Saudi Premier League. And yeah, it's pretty funny as well because when they go to rob banks, first of all, they go to rob a bank, and one of the reasons why they go to Bolivia is because it kind of reminded me of the scene in Inglourious Bastards where Brad Pitt says, "Oh yeah, I have the second best Italian, and Donnie here's got the best Italian," and it turns out none of them have any Italian. It's the exact same here.
Yes.
It gets to the point where they go to rob the bank, and the guy says something in Spanish, something about taking out a deposit, and the camera just kind of looks, kind of like as Sundance does. We just look at Butch Cassidy, and he just turns around and walks out, and he realizes he actually has no Spanish at all.
It's so funny. It's so funny because it's just yet another hint at his character and how you think he's such a genius, but then moments like these happen, and you're like, why did I think that? Like, it's so funny to follow. And a quick side note on Paul Newman's performance, I've seen a handful of Paul Newman movies. There's still plenty more I want to see, but I feel like he normally plays more of a serious role, and so to see him in a serious role that also has kind of airheady qualities about it, it's unique for Paul Newman, and it makes it one of his most memorable roles as well. I love it.
Yeah, I think he's brilliant in the film. And Etta plays, didn't mention earlier, is actually a school teacher. So then we just get this pretty funny scene of Etta trying to teach the two lads Spanish. And Paul Newman is in the other room. Butch Cassidy's in the other room, and he has his flashcards out whilst he's reading them to her through the wall, so she can't see that he's reading them. And she's like, "Wow, you're really learning." And he's like, "Oh, you're a great teacher." And we think that's where the joke ends, but it's not, because then when they go to rob a bank, they are robbing banks with flashcards, with like Spanish flashcards. It's actually so funny.
It is. It was something that, although I didn't remember a lot of the movie on my rewatch, one thing that I did remember without fail was that scene where they're trying to rob the bank, and he says like one command, and then like a sentence into it, he has to pull out his flashcards to look down.
Yeah.
And then what's even funnier is the commands he's giving are already outdated. He's like, put your hands
Yeah,
up.
yeah, yeah.
Their hands are up. Arriba. They're already up. It's like against the wall. They're already against the wall. Oh, jeez. Sorry. I just hit something on the wall. But but it's so funny. And that to me, I honestly think this is a bold statement because the movie's so funny, but I think that is the funniest scene of the whole movie. For me, at least.
I think I might agree with you.
Yeah, it's so good.
Things are going pretty well. We then get a bit of a montage of just the increasing police force chasing them as they keep successfully robbing these banks with flashcards until the last bank robbery, not a flashcard in sight. Well done, Sundance. Good lad. And then when they're out celebrating in a restaurant, they see the dreaded white hat. Oh, wow. LaForce is back. Now, again, bit of realism. They only see the back of his head.
Yeah.
So they're not sure if it's LaForce. The only thing they are sure of is that it's time to panic. Because if it is LaForce, they are done for. So again, allegedly, this is something that's true. Butch Cassidy decides to go straight. He doesn't want to rob banks anymore. And this is kind of the next few scenes are kind of the saddest scenes in the film. It really highlights the undertones that a lot of films had at the time with the transition of old Hollywood to new Hollywood, of basically these two gunslingers who are totally out of their depth, but they actually can't adapt to the new world. They can't adapt to the new work that's going on because, like, it suggested, why don't you take up farming? Oh, I don't know how to do farming. Like, there's no effort to learn. What if you guys... It's kind of like, oh, these guys really are doomed. And it was a thing that Etta Place said to them before they left for Bolivia, was my only rule is I won't see you get killed. And Etta Place, at the same time as the audience, realizes these lads are doomed. And she just says, I think I might head home first tomorrow, if that's okay. And what really signs, seals, and delivers their death warrants is they say, no problem. Because I think deep down they know that they are only good for robbing banks. But they do before all this, they do get one job where
yes.
things go quite pear-shaped. They are the guards of the payroll for this mining company, and they can't figure out if they were the guys who actually robbed this payroll before, and if this is just really easy money and they actually don't have to protect anyone at all, or if this is a totally other group of bandits and they actually do have to be on high alert. At first they're kind of like easy breezy, and Sundance shows him how he shoots and he says, you know, I'm better when I move, it's pretty great. But then they realize, oh no, actually we have to deal with the Bolivian bandits now.
There's one scene in particular where they're at a bank collecting a deposit, collecting some money to be transferred, and it's like one of them are like, didn't we rob this place the other day, last month, whatever it was, I don't remember the time frame. And so the rest of the scene, they're just like very much so looking down, covering their faces with their hats and everything. It's just so entertaining.
Yeah, and when they're all on high alert on the way to that bank, their boss, whose name I think is Percy, says, morons, I've got morons on my team, which is pretty funny. Because they're worried that they're going to get robbed on the way to the bank. They're not used to being on this side of the fence.
Yes.
So they're on high alert before they even have the money. And then as soon as they have the money, good old Percy gets shot in the chest, and the lads are back in danger again.
Yep. Poor Percy, gone too soon.
Gone far too soon. They come back after the Bolivian bandits come to take the money from Percy's dead body. And I think this is where we find out that the guys now have the nickname of Bandidos Yankees, or Yankees Bandidos, like the Yankee Bandits, basically.
Yeah.
Which is now become a whole new legend in South America. It's like they were Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid in North America, and now they're Bandidos Yankees in South America. Like, they actually have managed to almost like follow up their
Replicate.
mythos and their
Yeah.
aura. And yeah, they kill all the Bolivians, but just before they do, we find out in a pretty funny way that Butch Cassidy's never shot anyone before.
Yeah, it's funny too how the movie has two of those scenes. One with him never shooting someone, and then one with Sundance Kid not knowing how to swim, and they're both revealed
Yeah.
in very high stakes scenes where it's like you're saying this now, and so both of the reveals work really well to me.
Yeah, the not being able to swim one I kind of accidentally brushed over there. My apologies. Where again, it's another example of a great zoom, where
Yes.
they get to the cliff and then it zooms out and they're like, oh,
Yes,
and they're really cornered in and they realize, well, the only option here is to jump.
yeah, totally. And I think too, going back to the reveal that he's never shot a person too. I noticed this on a rewatch that it makes more sense now. The duel with Harvey earlier, he had an option of gun or knife, and he went with knife, and it's
Yeah.
now you know why. Now you know why he has no experience the other way, and so just the things adding up to works really well.
Yeah, because they are literally met with about 7 Bolivian bandits all pointing guns at them. And you know throughout the film that if it was maybe 3 or 4 of them, Sundance somehow would just have them. But the fact that there's 7 of them, he needs Butch Cassidy to just hit 2 of them.
Yeah,
He was like, just hit 2 of them. Hit them in the middle. And they managed to do it. And yeah, so after this and after Etta goes is the beginning of the end. They go to this jungle. They rob what is either a large donkey or a small horse that has this like a what's that thing called on the back?
like
the
oh my gosh,
iron thing that gets pressed on
yeah,
them.
yeah. Oh my gosh, why can't I think of it either? The branding.
Branding, yeah. It's got a specific branding which we also see on the saddle. And then whenever they rob this horse and they go into this village for a spot of lunch, one of the lads in the village recognizes the branding as, the stolen large donkey, small horse thing. And he gets the police. And thus, one of the best shootouts in all of Western cinema.
Yeah,
all of the
I think that's
Westerns.
safe to say.
It starts off with the lads shooting the Bolivian police who are on all the rooftops around the village until Butch Cassidy runs out of ammo. And they kind of have a bit of a back and forth as to who has to run and get the ammo. They realize it has to be Butch Cassidy because Butch Cassidy can't cover Sundance Kid with no bullets in his gun.
Yeah.
So Butch Cassidy has to do it. And as Butch Cassidy goes over, Sundance manages to take out a fair few of the police to a point where Butch Cassidy makes it to the horses where their ammo is. We get this great shot of Butch Cassidy just holding onto the 2 horses for dear life in between them, using them as shields, and making his way back. And then he gets shot.
Yes. Oh, it hurts.
Yeah, the beginning of the end is really here because Sundance also gets shot and the 2 of them are sitting indoors and Butch Cassidy says, I have a great idea. And he says, what? Similar to the Bolivia conversation, and he says, what if we go to Australia? And that's where the movie ends. They make it to Australia and everyone's happy.
Yeah, great movie. I've always wondered how they healed the wound so fast.
Yeah, no, unfortunately that's not what happens, because whenever we then see outside, the Bolivian military have shown up, and the military leader says to the police captain, where are they? Where is this army? And they say, no, it's 2 guys. And the guy's like, you called in the military for 2 guys? And he says, no, it's the Yankee bandits. And the military's like, amazing. Let's get everybody pointing at that doorway.
Yes, good job. Oh my gosh.
And then the closing line of the film, which is pretty funny, is Butch Cassidy says, "Oh, did you see LaForce out there by any chance?" And Sundance says, "No, I didn't see him." And Butch Cassidy goes, "Oh, good. I thought we were in real trouble there for a second." And then the two of them go out, literally all guns blazing, with about 1,000,000 guns pointed at them.
Yeah.
The end.
Yeah. Nice freeze frame shot.
Yeah.
But it's like a justified freeze frame. Like the freeze frames are normally very cheesy in movies, but this one is like arguably. I mean, I'd have to think about this more, but might be the best freeze frame I've seen in a movie. It just works so.
Yeah, I think it's
well.
a fair. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'd have to look into that more because I can't think of any other ones right now. But it's at least in the conversation for best
Yeah.
freeze frames in movies. And what's cool too is that the freeze frame happens, but the gunshots continue even past the freeze frame. So their demise it has happened kind of thing, but they go out big. And so great ending, bittersweet ending, but I don't know that there was any other way to end this story, honestly.
Yeah. It's kind of like the director's looking away for us. Like, we don't have to look, we just have to listen. It's like
Yeah.
covering your eyes.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to see them get shot.
No.
But unfortunately, you can't help but listen to it. And that is Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Nathan, what are your takeaways from this movie? What did you think of it?
Even better on a rewatch. I think the first time I saw it, it was mostly just familiarizing myself with its legacy and learning why it's so iconic. And I gave it like an 8 out of 10, which on my scale, it's great. 8 is great. I'm like, yeah, it was a great watch. I really enjoyed it. But on a rewatch, I was going into it already knowing the plot, how it ended, remembering some of the key scenes. But then there were so many other scenes that were new to me, or not necessarily new, but like reintroductions, I guess. Like it was kind of a thing where I knew Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid as a whole story, but I had forgotten how much the movie focuses on the one chase scene. And it was only when the chase scene began that I was like, oh yeah, the next 30 minutes of the movie is going to be this chase scene happening. But I was looking forward to it. It wasn't something I was dreading. It was something I was excited for. And I think something that you said that, again, I'm not a diehard Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. I think I will be with time. But in the 2 times I've watched it, I didn't even realize, well, I realized, but hearing you talk about the realization of the Wild West being a dying thing, it makes the movie even more of a tragedy. It reminds me of movies like, I mean, the first that comes to mind is completely different, but have you seen The Artist, the Best Picture winner?
I actually haven't, no.
Okay. So I bring that up because that movie's about a man who works in the silent film industry, but he knows that talkies are becoming a thing and he has no place in the silent film industry. And kind of similar to Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, he doesn't want to learn how to be in the talking movies. And so you're watching this character that you like and you care about, but you also kind of know the inevitable is going to happen. And so in that case, I think Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid it gets away with being this comedic tragedy, which isn't a subgenre you can label many movies, but this one takes it and it takes it with full stride, and I think that's why it works so well, because one moment you're laughing, another you're like super sad with what everything's come to. So love the movie. 9 out of 10. It's sitting at a 9 out of 10 for me right now, but I could see more rewatches just appreciating the story even more and what it's going for, and it getting that elite 10 out of 10 status someday. So, but for now, with the 2 watches, I'd go with a 9.
Yeah, I'm exact same on the Letterboxd. If you want to follow me, Harry Bailey 888. I also gave it a 4.5 stars.
There we
a
go.
9 out of 10. I thoroughly enjoyed it. The chase is amazing. The writing is amazing. The humor is amazing. The chemistry between Robert Redford and, I was going to call him Butch Cassidy, and Paul Newman is amazing. The cinematography is great. It really covers. I feel like Wyoming is just like one of them states where, like, if you make a film there, it's probably going to look good anyway.
Yeah,
But
agreed.
they capture it very well. The whole Bolivia stuff is brilliant. Also, again, allegedly, So there's the biggest point of contention with Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid is how they died and where they died, because supposedly, story goes, they were killed in a shootout in Bolivia and they were buried in unmarked graves. But then the issue with that is the bodies were never identified. See, nobody can actually confirm if it was Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, or if they actually escaped and it was just two other members of their gang. Because then there's these other people who say that, like, oh, Butch Cassidy actually moved into our neighborhood when he was an elderly man and was like the friendliest neighbor in the world. So like, there's so many
So he
different
really went
conspiracies
straight.
and theories. Yeah, literally.
Wow.
So there's so many different theories as to what actually happened.
Wow.
But as far as the film goes, I thought it ended amazingly. I think the director did a great job. I know the director and Catherine Ross didn't get on, which is why she probably wasn't in it as much as I maybe would have wanted, because I thought she was a cool character.
Yeah.
She was actually banned from set for
Really?
any of the scenes that she wasn't in, because for the train robbery scene, the fifth camera operator didn't show up to work that day, so she just took the camera and was like, I'll operate it. And for some reason, he had such an issue with this that he banned her from the set.
What the?
Yeah.
I was waiting
Bit
for
of an
you to
extreme
get,
reaction.
Yeah, I was waiting for you to get to something bad she did, and then it just ended. And I'm like, wait, what?
No, she was just being helpful.
Jeez, that's so unfortunate.
Yeah, so they did not get on.
No.
But yeah, otherwise I thought the film is amazing. It's, as I said, on a list of sort of childhood classics that mean a lot to me. I think it'll definitely just be a 10 out of 10 watch one day.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, for now, I'm still rocking a 9 out of 10, a 4.5 out of 5. So I still thoroughly enjoyed it. I don't just dish those out to any L film. So
Agreed.
I would definitely recommend this. And if you don't like westerns and you haven't seen this, then you haven't tried westerns properly, because this is a fantastic western, and it's not just cowboys shooting each other, which if you don't just like that, fair enough. But there's a lot to this film. There's a lot to be said about, not liking your job and getting on with your best mate and getting through adversity and time passing you by and not getting adjusted to the new trends like bicycles. So there's a lot to unpack with this film, and I just think it's an absolutely amazing western, one of the best ever.
Yeah, and I think you could even say it's like it's a very accessible western. So people that even aren't familiar with the genre or don't like the genre, it has so much more. And you already pointed that out, so I won't go into it. But it's offering so much more than being a western. It just happens to be a western too, and that's also a pro of it for those who like westerns. But there's more than just it being a western. So give it a try if you haven't. I think if nothing else, there's a reason it's iconic as it is, and a reason I've heard about it my whole life. So give it a watch and see what you think about it.
And that's that. Next week, it is myself and Shane again coming back at you with a 40s Hitchcock film. That will be Shadow of a Doubt. One of the best of the 40s, for me anyway. It's a great, great film. It's our first Joseph Cotton film of the podcast, which is exciting. In the meantime, if you want to support the podcast, feel free to give us a rating on Spotify or Amazon Music. Just not Apple Podcasts. Burn them to the ground. They won't accept us for some reason. And other than that, on YouTube, subscribe, like, all that sort of stuff. We also have some more bonus content coming your way soon. But again, like last time, I'm not going to tell you what it is until, we get it all organized, because I don't want to promise anyone anything that I can't, uphold. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I'll see you all next week. Thank you very much.
All right, perfect. Yeah, thank you so much for having me on this show. Love talking about Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. If you are interested in classic Hollywood, I talk about all things classic Hollywood. Really focus on ranking actors, actresses, directors from that time period. But if you're interested in that kind of thing, definitely pay me a visit. The channel's called Maple Street Movies, and it's even that within itself is a reference to the Twilight Zone. And so love old media, and coming up here pretty soon, August, annually I do Alfred Hitchcock Month every August because his birthday's in August. So something to look forward to. I'm on YouTube, Letterboxd, and Instagram. I was like, which one do I want to include? I don't think I want them to follow my Twitter. So yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Cinema Nate, and then Letterboxd Super Nate, kind of like Super 8, but Nate. See what I did there? Anyways, follow me there. And yeah, again, thanks for having me.
It was a pleasure. We'll have you on again soon, of course.
Sounds great to me.
See you all next week. Thank you very much.